herd of horses brought to the Americas by the Spanish got loose and started to populate the West. Today these horses are called Mustangs. And around the beginnings of the 1900s, people started to capture these horses and use them for profit.
Get that horse!
They would use inhumane ways to capture the horses, such as using ropes that had large tires tied to the end of it, so the horse would slow, giving the people enough time to proceed to hit them with their trucks or aircraft. They would then proceed to load multiple horses, either severely injured or dead, into a cramped trailer, and usually ended up taking them to the pet food plant. This form of torture was called Mustanging.
There was a lot of political unrest because the Mustangs were not being treated very well. There were people that were gathering them and taking them to killer plants. There were pretty cruel methods used and so on, and there was a big campaign to change that.
After witnessing America's wild horses being abused and taken for profit, Velma Braun Johnston triumphantly fought on the behalf of Mustangs, overcoming her setbacks and ultimately helping to pass the Wild Free-Roaming Horses and Burros Act of 1971. Velma Braun Johnston was born in 1912, Reno, Nevada, and at age 11 contracted polio, which had left her bedridden in a hospital for almost a year. The battle with polio had led to slight disfiguration, and the children at school would bully and tease her about it. So instead of playing with them after school, she would go back to her parents' ranch and play with her animals. When she was out of school, she married Charlie Johnston and found work as a secretary for Reno's insurance executive, Gordon Harris. She also ran a daycare at her ranch in the summertime. Velma's first encounter with the wild horses was on her way to work one day. She came across a trailer that was dripping blood along the road, and not knowing what it was, she decided to take a look. The source of blood came from a young Mustang that had been trampled to death, most likely heading to a pet food plant. Horrified, she wanted to help these poor creatures. She began to gather facts and information to create presentations that would speak to audiences of all ages, and in 1952 meetings in Virginia City, she was nicknamed Wild Horse Annie. Supposed to be a derogatory name, she took it and used it to show that she was not afraid to fight. In 1955, her work went to making the law that would ban any motorized vehicle from harming the Mustangs. Unfortunately, this did not stop Mustangs from being harmed. She began working to get the public involved. She would do public presentations, and these presentations led her to gaining the support of Walter S. Baring, a Nevada U.S. representative. Although on opposite parties, they worked together and in 1959 passed the Wild Horse Annie Act. It prohibited the use of any form of motorized vehicles as well as poisoning of water holes done to either capture or kill wild horses. But the battle was not over yet. The Mustangs were once again faced with problems. They were beginning to lose land in the West, so Velma once again had to stop this issue.
Well, Velma was our first president, and our organization formed specifically for Velma, and our second president was Helen Riley, and Helen was Velma's personal secretary from 1960 until 1977. So she was with Velma at her side consistently for all those years, and she was like a rock for Velma.
During her fight for the rights of Mustangs, Velma was also threatened. Some were even for her life.
There was a hit out on her life. In fact, one of the ranchers wanted to make her into dog food.
But the strong-headed and fierce woman she was would not back down and continued.
She was a woman before her time because whenever she was doing her work out there, women were supposed to be at home cooking and baking. And even though she loved to cook and bake, that was something that she would never be able to do because she was too busy out in the world saving wild horses. But she was a powerful woman. She spoke the truth, and I think she's a model to all young women in our country that there isn't anything that we can't attain if we put our mind to it. And that's what Velma did.
I knew Wild Horse Annie when I was younger, and what really impressed me is how much compassion she had for horses. We just had a lot in common. And my mom, dad, and I, we just really loved Wild Horse Annie. And we were glad to help her on her noble cause to save the wild horses and prevent their further persecution. But it took a lot of courage. She didn't let others lead her around by the nose to fit in. She spoke up. What I liked is, how she, brought me on board. I told her, I feel the same way and I want to help. And she said, oh yeah, definitely, Craig. We can really use your help. She was a formative influence in my life. I followed through the rest of my life trying to defend and help the wild horses and their right to live free.
Sadly, Charlie, her husband, passed away.
Velma had some challenges throughout this time, but when she lost Charlie, her love of her life, that was when Helen said that your job isn't over until we get federal legislation to protect these wild horses and burros.
Although set back, she was determined to continue and began establishing horse refuges. In 1966, she established one of the largest Mustang refuges, which was settled in Nellis Air Force Base in southern Nevada. She started gaining the support of those around her and led to thousands of people from elementary students to seniors being inspired by Velma. So they wrote letters to Congress to help save the Mustangs.
I particularly like the response of the children programs I give in the schools. You can almost see the stars and stripes waving in their eyeballs when you give them stirring talking about we the people, government by the people, we the people. That means you kids too. It isn't just us grown-ups that are the people that I'm talking about, because these horses belong to all the people of America and they exist on land that belongs to all the people of America.
The day had finally come. Velma went to the Congress building to testify. Many of Velma's supporters watched as Velma spoke. She left the congressman in awe with her sharp yet persuasive voice, and later left the Congress building knowing that she had finally won. This led to the Wild Horses and Burros Act of 1971.
When you see the power that she commanded, and to think that this passed unanimously in Congress without one dissenting vote, that says something about her. It stopped the massive roundups, the massive slaughter, and these animals were sold for chicken food in California often. So that was the first. That was a huge undertaking.
Now this law said we were going to allocate certain places where they could be free, where they could live naturally and be themselves and not be slaves. And I think that was just such a beautiful, noble intent of the Wild Tree Roaming Horse and Burros Act.
The act provided specific protections to all unbranded and unclaimed horses and burros on public lands of the United States, and made it a crime for anyone to harass or kill these animals on federal land. It required the Departments of Interior and Agriculture to protect the animals. Beginning with this enactment, it required the studies and habitats of free-ranging horses and burros, permitting public land to be set aside for their use. On June 27, 1977, Velma Brown Johnston passed away due to her recent battles with cancer. Even after experiencing pain after pain, she fought for something that meant the whole world to her and did not stop until she was completely finished.
She is probably one of the most powerful, loving, compassionate, kind beings that can live in the world. She set the path to freedom for wild horses and the wild burros.
Due to Velma's accomplishments, I was able to adopt 3 Mustangs of my own and give them each a forever home.